I received a text message telling me to leave the house and not say anything to my son, because he couldn't suspect a thing. My name is Theodore Walsh, and I'm about to tell you the most painful truth about family betrayal you'll ever hear. I'm 71 years old, and until 3 weeks ago I thought I knew what love looked like. I was wrong about everything. It's been 14 months since my wife Isabella passed away from cancer. 14 months of washing one plate instead of two, of talking to her photograph at breakfast, of sleeping on my side of our king-sized bed like she might come back and need her space. The grief counselor at Sacred Heart Community Center told me this was normal, that widowers often maintain routines as if their spouse might return. But I wasn't doing it from hope. I was doing it from pure, stubborn habit. Every evening at 6:15, I'd stand at our kitchen sink washing my dinner dishes, staring out at the small vegetable garden Isabella had planted 3 springs ago. The tomatoes were still growing wild, the basil had taken over half the plot, and somehow her sunflowers kept blooming without any care from me. I kept meaning to tend to it properly, but every time I stepped outside with gardening gloves, I'd just stand there frozen, overwhelmed by her absence. My restaurant business was thriving, nothing fancy. Just 3 honest establishments that served good food to working families. The Copper Kettle on Elm Street, Riverside Diner near the old factory district, and my newest place, Mama's Kitchen, out by the shopping plaza. Isabella had insisted on that last name back in 2019, saying it would make people think of home cooking. She was right, as usual. The place was packed every weekend, but success felt hollow without her there to share it. Marcus, my 34-year-old son, hadn't spoken to me since Isabella's funeral. We'd had a catastrophic argument about money. He wanted me to loan him $180,000 for some tech startup investment he swore would make us both millionaires. When I explained that my capital was tied up in restaurant equipment loans and my retirement accounts, he lost his mind, called me a selfish old fool who didn't understand modern opportunities. The words that destroyed me were his parting shot. Mom always believed in taking risks. She would have supported me. Then he walked out of my life completely. That Thursday evening in late September, I was doing my usual routine, standing at the kitchen sink, methodically cleaning my single dinner plate and coffee mug, when the phone rang. The landline, not my cell phone. Nobody called the landline except telemarketers and the occasional wrong number. I almost ignored it. I was tired of people trying to sell me extended car warranties or asking about my recent hotel stay in Florida, which never happened. But something made me dry my hands on Isabella's favorite dish towel and answer. "Hello? Dad?" The voice was tentative, almost nervous. My heart literally stopped. Marcus. After 14 months of absolute silence. "Marcus," I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "Dad, this is hard for me. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, especially about Mom and what she would want." I could hear city traffic in the background, maybe car doors slamming. "I was wondering if you'd be willing to come to dinner. This Saturday night? Christopher and I would really love to see you again." Christopher, Marcus's partner of 4 years. Isabella had absolutely adored Christopher, said he brought out Marcus's gentler side, made him more thoughtful and considerate. I had liked him too before everything went to hell between Marcus and me. "I would love that," I said, probably sounding too eager, too grateful. "Perfect. How about 7 o'clock? I'll send you our address in a text message." There was a pause and I heard him take a deep breath. "Dad, I want you to know that I'm really sorry about our fight, about not calling after the funeral. I've missed you terribly. I think about Mom every day and I know she wouldn't want us to be estranged like this." Those words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Good tears. The kind I hadn't cried since Isabella's last lucid day in the hospital. After he hung up, I just stood there holding the cordless phone, staring at Isabella's sunflowers through the window. For the first time since her death, I felt something besides grief and loneliness. I felt genuine hope for the future. Saturday felt like it would never arrive. I spent the entire week planning every detail like I was preparing for a job interview instead of dinner with my own son. I wanted everything to be absolutely perfect for our reconciliation. I selected my charcoal gray suit, the one Isabella had picked out for Marcus and Christopher's commitment ceremony 4 years ago. It still fit well. though I'd lost about 15 pounds since Isabella's death. Apparently, grief was an effective diet plan, though I wouldn't recommend it. I spent 20 minutes polishing my black dress shoes until they reflected the bathroom lights, and chose a deep blue tie that Isabella always said made my eyes look younger. For a gift, I decided on a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label whiskey. Marcus had mentioned loving good scotch at his commitment ceremony, and I remembered him specifically praising this brand during the reception toasts. It cost me $325 at Premium Spirits on Washington Avenue, but reconnecting with my son was worth any amount of money. The address Marcus texted me was 12 on 47 Oakwood Manor Drive in Prestwick Estates, the most exclusive gated community in our city. I had to read it 4 times to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. When I was growing up here in the 80s, that entire area was just farmland and a few old barns. Now it housed pharmaceutical executives, investment bankers, and tech entrepreneurs in custom mansions that cost more than most people earned in a decade. I arranged for a premium cab service, one of those high-end companies that used luxury sedans instead of regular taxis. The driver, a professional-looking man named James, arrived in a spotless silver BMW. He complimented my cologne, an expensive bottle of Tom Ford that Isabella had given me for our last Christmas together, and that I'd been saving for special occasions. "Important evening planned?" James asked as we drove through increasingly affluent neighborhoods with manicured lawns and elaborate fountain displays. "Dinner with my son," I replied, adjusting my tie for probably the 20th time since leaving home. "That's wonderful. Family is everything." As we drove deeper into Prestwick Estates, I couldn't help but stare at the massive houses we passed. Each one looked like something from a luxury home magazine. Sprawling properties with circular driveways, 3-car garages, professional landscaping, and elaborate security systems. The cheapest house in this neighborhood probably cost $2 million minimum. I started feeling confused and slightly anxious. How could Marcus afford to live here? The last time we'd spoken, he was working as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized advertising firm, making maybe $60,000 a year. Christopher worked as a graphic designer for a nonprofit organization. Together, their combined income might have been $90,000 annually. There was no way they could afford a mortgage on a Prestwick Estates property, even with perfect credit and a substantial down payment. Maybe they were house-sitting for wealthy friends, or perhaps Christopher had gotten a major promotion I didn't know about. Or maybe Marcus's tech investment had actually paid off spectacularly, and he was living proof that I'd been wrong to refuse him the loan money. "Here we are, sir," James announced, pulling up to an imposing iron gate with the number 1247 displayed in elegant brass numerals. The house beyond the gate was absolutely breathtaking. A modern colonial design with pristine white columns, professional landscape lighting, and a circular driveway featuring a fountain with dancing water jets. I could see a 3-car garage with what looked like a BMW, a Mercedes, and some kind of luxury sports car parked inside. I paid James, including a generous tip, and walked through the ornate front entrance. My hands were actually shaking slightly as I rang the doorbell, which played an elaborate classical melody instead of a simple chime. This was going to be an interesting evening. The front door opened to reveal a young Latina woman in a crisp black uniform dress with a white apron. She smiled warmly and spoke with a slight accent. "You must be Mr. Walsh. I'm Sophia, the house manager. Please come in. Marcus and Christopher are waiting for you in the living room." House manager. Not housekeeper. House manager. As if this place required professional management like a small hotel. I followed Sophia through an entrance foyer that was larger than my entire kitchen, complete with marble flooring, a crystal chandelier, and fresh flower arrangements that probably cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. The living room was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a professionally landscaped backyard with a swimming pool, outdoor kitchen, and what appeared to be a putting green. The furniture looked expensive. Leather sofas that probably cost $15,000 each, abstract artwork that seemed like it belonged in a museum, and an entertainment system that covered an entire wall. "Dad!" Marcus approached with open arms, and for a moment, I forgot all my confusion about the house's opulence. He looked good, tanned, well-dressed in a cashmere sweater and perfectly tailored slacks, maybe 10 pounds heavier than the last time I'd seen him, which gave him a healthier, more prosperous appearance. He hugged me tightly, and I felt 14 months of tension dissolve slightly. He smelled like expensive cologne, and what might have been cigar smoke. "Theodore, welcome." Christopher appeared beside Marcus, also looking impeccably groomed and stylish. He kissed my cheek in that European way he'd always done, making me feel sophisticated and worldly. "This place is incredible," I said, probably gaping like a tourist. "How did you—" "Oh, we've been incredibly fortunate," Marcus said quickly, guiding me toward the bar area. "Christopher's design firm landed some major corporate contracts, and my investment work has been paying off beautifully. We've been very, very lucky." Investment work? Last I knew, Marcus was coordinating marketing campaigns for coffee shop grand openings and small retail businesses. "I brought you something," I said, presenting the Johnny Walker Blue Label. "Dad, you shouldn't have." But Marcus's eyes lit up as he examined the bottle. "This is absolutely perfect. Sophia, could you please bring us some crystal tumblers from the dining room?" "Of course, sir," Sophia replied, hurrying away efficiently. I noticed she seemed nervous, almost jumpy. Her hands were trembling slightly, and she kept glancing toward the kitchen as if expecting someone to appear. Strange behavior for someone who worked in such an obviously well-run household. "Let's sit down and catch up," Christopher suggested, gesturing toward the expensive leather sofas. "We have so much to talk about, and Sophia is preparing something special for dinner." As we settled into the ridiculously comfortable seating, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Not wrong exactly, but staged. Like everything was a little too perfect, a little too welcoming, a little too eager. Marcus poured 3 generous servings of the whiskey into crystal glasses that probably cost more than most people's monthly car payments. He raised his glass in a toast. "To family," he said, his voice slightly emotional. "To Mom's memory and to new beginnings." "To Isabella," I replied, clinking glasses with my son and his partner. The whiskey was smooth and expensive tasting, warming my throat and chest. For the first time in over a year, I felt genuinely happy. Maybe I'd been overthinking everything. Maybe Marcus and Christopher really had been incredibly successful, and I was just having trouble accepting that my son had achieved such prosperity without my help or approval. "So tell me about these investment successes," I said, settling back into the leather cushions. "What kind of work are you doing now?" Marcus exchanged a quick glance with Christopher. So fast, I almost missed it. "Well, it's complicated, Dad. Cryptocurrency, some real estate ventures, technology startups. Very diversified portfolio." Sophia returned with an elaborate cheese and charcuterie board, her hands still trembling slightly as she set it on the coffee table. She avoided eye contact with everyone and retreated quickly toward the kitchen. Something was definitely not right here. Dinner was served in a formal dining room that could have hosted a small wedding reception. The table was set with china that looked antique and expensive, silver cutlery that caught the light from an enormous chandelier, and multiple wine glasses at each place setting. Sophia had prepared what Marcus described as herb-crusted lamb with roasted vegetables and truffle risotto, the kind of meal you'd expect at a 5-star restaurant. Not a family dinner. "This is incredible," I said, genuinely impressed by the presentation and taste. "Sophia is amazingly talented. She's been with us for 8 months now," Christopher explained, refilling my wine glass with what he claimed was a $200 bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon. "We're very fortunate to have found her." Marcus kept encouraging me to drink more. Every time I took a sip of wine or whiskey, he'd immediately refill my glass. "Dad, you're not drinking enough. This is a celebration. We need to make up for lost time." I was starting to feel slightly lightheaded, which was unusual. I'd always been able to handle alcohol well, and I hadn't consumed more than a typical evening's amount. Maybe grief had affected my tolerance, or maybe I was just emotionally overwhelmed by the reunion. "So, Dad," Marcus said, cutting into his lamb with surgical precision, "tell us about the restaurants. How are the finances looking these days? Are you still doing as well as you were when Mom was alive?" The question seemed oddly specific. "Business is good. Very good. Actually, people always need affordable quality meals." "That's wonderful to hear," Christopher chimed in. And your retirement planning, your savings accounts. I imagine you've built up quite a nest egg over the years. Another strangely direct financial question. I took another sip of wine, trying to think through the growing fog in my head. I'm comfortable. Isabella and I were always careful with money. That's smart, Marcus said, leaning forward with intense interest. And the house? It must be worth quite a bit now, with property values rising so much in our neighborhood. Why were they asking about my assets like they were conducting a financial audit? I tried to focus, but my thoughts felt increasingly scattered and unclear. Marcus, why are you asking me these questions? I managed to say, though my words felt slightly slurred. Oh, Dad, I'm sorry. I don't mean to pry. It's just that Christopher and I have been talking about family financial planning, estate preparation, that sort of thing. We want to make sure you're taken care of as you get older. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. A text message. I fumbled to check it, my coordination feeling off. The message was from an unknown number. Get out now, don't say anything to your son. Leave immediately. Trust me. I stared at the screen, trying to process what I was reading. My vision seemed slightly blurry, and the room felt like it was tilting slightly. Everything okay, Dad? Marcus asked, his voice sounding concerned but his eyes watching me with unusual intensity. Just a spam message, I lied, shoving the phone back into my pocket. Nothing important. But my hands were shaking now and not from emotion. Something was very wrong. The wine, the whiskey, the excessive hospitality, the financial questions, and now this mysterious warning text. My instincts were screaming at me to pay attention, to think clearly, but my brain felt like it was wrapped in cotton. More wine, Dad? Christopher asked, reaching for the bottle again. No, thank you, I said firmly, placing my hand over my glass. I think I've had enough. The look that passed between Marcus and Christopher was unmistakable this time. Disappointment, almost frustration. Are you sure? Marcus pressed. We opened this bottle especially for you. I'm sure. I needed to think. I needed to get somewhere private and figure out what was happening. Could I use your restroom? Of course, Dad. Down the hallway, second door on the right. I stood up carefully, testing my balance. Everything felt unsteady, like I was walking on a boat in rough water. As I left the dining room, I heard Marcus and Christopher begin whispering urgently to each other, but I couldn't make out the words through the ringing in my ears. Instead of going to the bathroom, I stumbled toward the kitchen, my coordination getting worse by the minute. Whatever was happening to me was accelerating. My phone buzzed again with another text from the same unknown number. They drugged your drinks, exit through the kitchen. I'll help you. Drugged. The word hit me like ice water. My son, my own son, had drugged me, but why? What could they possibly want from a 71-year-old restaurant owner? I pushed through the kitchen door and found Sophia frantically cleaning dishes, her movements quick and nervous. When she saw me, her eyes went wide with fear. Mr. Walsh, you shouldn't be in here, she whispered urgently. You sent the texts, I whispered back, though even whispering felt difficult. Didn't you? She nodded quickly, glancing toward the dining room. They put something in your whiskey bottle. I saw them do it this afternoon. Some kind of powder that dissolves completely. Why? What do they want? I heard them talking on the phone earlier. Something about documents, about transferring property ownership. They owe money to very dangerous people. A lot of money. She grabbed my arm gently but firmly. You need to leave right now before the drug makes you too confused to think clearly. My legs felt like jelly, but adrenaline was helping me stay focused. How do I get out? Back door through the garden. There's a gate that leads to Maple Street. I already called you a taxi. It's waiting on the corner. Why are you helping me? I asked, steadying myself against the kitchen counter. Tears filled her eyes. Because I have a father too, and because what they're planning to do to you is evil. I could hear Marcus calling from the dining room. Dad, everything okay in there? Go, Sophia whispered, pushing me toward the back door. Pretend you went to the bathroom when you get back. Act normal for just a few more minutes. But I wasn't going back to the dining room. The drug was making it hard to think. But one thing was crystal clear. I needed to get away from this house immediately. I fumbled with the back door handle, my motor skills deteriorating rapidly. Sophia helped me open it, and I stepped into the cool night air. The garden was elaborate and well lit, but I could barely focus on the pathway to the gate. My phone rang. The unknown number again. "Hello?" I answered, supporting myself against a decorative fountain. "Mr. Walsh, this is Sophia. I'm calling from the kitchen landline. Can you make it to the gate?" "I think so." The taxi driver's name is William. He's in a blue Honda Civic. I told him you're having a medical emergency and need to go to St. Mary's Hospital emergency room. "Hospital?" "Yes. You need to get that drug out of your system, and you need to call the police. What they did to you is attempted poisoning. It's a serious felony." I stumbled through the garden, using decorative stones and plant containers to steady myself. Behind me, I could hear Marcus's voice getting louder. "Dad, Dad, where are you?" The gate was heavier than expected, but I managed to open it and emerge onto Maple Street. A blue Honda Civic was parked under a streetlight. Engine running. The driver rolled down his window. "Mr. Walsh, I'm William. Let's get you to the hospital." As I collapsed into the passenger seat, I could hear Marcus shouting from somewhere behind the house. "Dad, where are you going? Come back." "Drive," I told William, though the word came out slurred and barely comprehensible. As we pulled away from Prestwick Estates, I watched the mansion disappear in the side mirror. My son, the child Isabella and I had raised, loved, and sacrificed for, had just tried to drug me into signing over everything I owned. The betrayal felt worse than the drug coursing through my system. William drove quickly but safely through the Saturday evening traffic, while I slumped in the passenger seat, trying to process what had just happened. My phone kept buzzing with calls from Marcus, but I couldn't trust my judgment enough to answer. "Mr. Walsh, we're almost at St. Mary's," William said, glancing at me with concern. "The lady who called said you might have been poisoned. Should I take you straight to the emergency room entrance?" "Yes," I managed to say, though my tongue felt thick and unresponsive. At the hospital, William helped me out of the car and walked me to the emergency room doors. I tried to pay him, but he waved me away. The lady already took care of it through the app. "You just focus on getting better." The emergency room was busy, but when I explained to the triage nurse that I believed I'd been drugged without my consent, things moved quickly. Within 20 minutes, I was in a private room with an IV line in my arm, and a young doctor named Dr. Patricia Chen asking me detailed questions. "Can you describe what you consumed this evening, Mr. Walsh?" "Whiskey, red wine." My son kept refilling my glasses, encouraging me to drink more. Just saying those words out loud made the betrayal feel more real and more painful. "Any unusual taste or immediate effects?" "No unusual taste. But I became dizzy, confused, lost coordination. My thinking became foggy much faster than normal alcohol consumption would cause. Dr. Chen ordered blood and urine tests to identify what substances were in my system. "We're going to keep you here for observation while we wait for the lab results. Given your age and the potential for serious complications, we want to be very careful." While I waited, I called the police from the hospital room phone. Detective Maria Rodriguez arrived within an hour, a serious-looking woman in her 40s who took detailed notes while I explained everything that had happened. "Mr. Walsh, this is a very serious crime. Administering drugs to someone without their knowledge or consent is aggravated assault. If they intended to use your impaired state to defraud you of money or property, we're looking at additional charges of elder abuse and conspiracy to commit theft." "My son is involved," I said, the words feeling surreal. "My own son." "That makes it more painful, but it doesn't make it less criminal," Detective Rodriguez replied gently but firmly. "Do you have any idea what specific documents or property transfers they might have been planning? I own 3 restaurants and a house, probably worth close to $2 million total, plus retirement accounts and savings." I paused, remembering Sophia's words. The housekeeper said she overheard them talking about owing money to dangerous people. That suggests they're in debt to loan sharks or organized crime figures. People get desperate when they owe money to those kinds of creditors. She closed her notebook. "We'll need to move quickly. If they realize you've escaped and contacted authorities, they might try to destroy evidence or flee." "Doctor." Chen returned with my test results. "Mr. Walsh, you were drugged with gamma-hydroxybutyric acid, commonly known as GHB. It's a central nervous system depressant that causes confusion, impaired judgment, and memory problems. In higher doses, it can cause unconsciousness or even death. How long until it's completely out of my system? Another few hours with the IV fluids we're giving you. You're fortunate you didn't consume more of it. Detective Rodriguez stood up. Mr. Walsh, I'm going to coordinate with our narcotics unit and get search warrants for the residence. The housekeeper who helped you, Sophia, will be a crucial witness. Do you know her last name? No, but she saved my life. She risked her job, maybe her safety, to warn a stranger. We'll protect her. People like Sophia are heroes, even if they don't realize it. As the detective left to begin the investigation, I lay in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Marcus. I turned it off. Whatever explanation he might offer, whatever lies he might tell, I wasn't ready to hear them. The child Isabella and I had raised, the young man we'd been so proud of, had tried to poison me for money. The grief of that betrayal felt almost worse than losing Isabella herself. Around midnight, while I was finally starting to feel mentally clear again, my hospital room phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown. Hello? Mr. Walsh, this is Sophia. I'm calling from a payphone near the police station. Are you okay? I'm at the hospital, but I'm going to be fine. Sophia, you saved my life. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. But I need to tell you some things I heard today. Things the police should know. I'm listening. Marcus owes $450,000 to a man named Vincent Torino. He's a loan shark who operates out of downtown. Very dangerous people. Mr. Walsh, they gave Marcus until next Friday to pay, or they said they would hurt Christopher. My blood ran cold. Even in my anger at Marcus, I didn't want Christopher to be harmed. He'd always seemed like a genuinely good person. That's why they needed your money so desperately, Sophia continued. I heard them talking about forged power of attorney documents. They had a lawyer coming to the house tomorrow morning with papers for you to sign while you were still drugged and confused. A lawyer was involved in this? Yes. Someone named Mitchell Brennan. Marcus kept calling him, saying everything was ready for Sunday morning. I wrote down the name on a napkin from my hospital tray. Sophia, where are you staying tonight? Are you safe? I have a sister in Queens. I took a bus there after I helped you escape. I quit my job, obviously, but it was the right thing to do. Listen to me carefully, Sophia. I own 3 restaurants here in the city. When this is all over, I want to offer you a position as assistant manager at one of them. Better pay, better hours, and you'd be working for someone who respects your integrity. She was quiet for a moment. Mr. Walsh, that's very kind, but you don't owe me anything. This isn't about owing. This is about recognizing character when I see it. You risked everything to protect a stranger. That tells me exactly what kind of person you are. After Sophia hung up, I called Detective Rodriguez's direct number and told her about Vincent Torino, the gambling debt, and the lawyer named Mitchell Brennan who was planning to come to the house Sunday morning. This gives us everything we need, Detective Rodriguez said. We've been watching Torino for months, trying to build a case against his operation. Your son's situation might be the break we've been waiting for. Detective, what's going to happen to Marcus and Christopher? Mr. Walsh, they committed serious felonies, attempted poisoning, conspiracy to commit elder fraud, working with known criminals. They're looking at significant prison time. Christopher might have been pressured into this. If Marcus owed money to dangerous people, we'll investigate all the circumstances, but Christopher participated willingly in drugging you. He's an adult who made choices just like Marcus did. I hung up and stared out the hospital room window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, my son was probably panicking, trying to figure out how his perfect plan had fallen apart. Part of me still loved him. He was my child, Isabella's baby. But another part of me felt nothing but disgust. How had we raised someone capable of this? Where had we gone wrong as parents? Dr. Chen checked on me around 2 in the morning. Your blood work is looking much better, Mr. Walsh. We'll keep you until morning for observation. Then you'll be free to go home. Home. My empty house with Isabella's garden and her photographs and the crushing silence that had become my constant companion. But maybe silence was better than the alternative. Maybe being alone was safer than trusting family members who saw me as nothing more than a source of money to solve their problems. I closed my eyes and tried to remember happier times with Marcus, teaching him to ride a bicycle, attending his college graduation, walking him down the aisle at his commitment ceremony. Those memories felt like they belonged to someone else's life now. Sunday morning, I was discharged from St. Mary's Hospital feeling physically recovered but emotionally devastated. Detective Rodriguez picked me up personally and drove me to the police station for a more detailed statement. We executed the search warrant at the Prestwick Estates house at 6 this morning, she told me as we drove through quiet Sunday streets. Marcus and Christopher were both there, along with the lawyer, Mitchell Brennan. They actually had the lawyer there? With a briefcase full of forged documents, power of attorney papers, property transfer forms, even paperwork to access your bank accounts, all prepared for your signature while you were incapacitated. The scope of their planning was breathtaking. This wasn't a desperate last-minute scheme. They had orchestrated a comprehensive plan to steal everything I owned. We also found evidence of the GHB in the kitchen, along with text messages between Marcus and Brennan discussing the timeline for getting your signature on the documents. At the police station, I spent 3 hours giving my complete statement to Detective Rodriguez and Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Morrison. They showed me photographs of the forged documents and my own signature practice sheets that Marcus had apparently been using to perfect forgeries. Mr. Walsh, this is one of the most elaborate elder fraud cases I've ever prosecuted, ADA Morrison told me. The level of premeditation and planning demonstrates that this was a sophisticated criminal enterprise. What are the charges? For Marcus and Christopher: conspiracy to commit elder abuse, attempted poisoning with intent to commit fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit grand theft. For the lawyer, Brennan, conspiracy charges, fraud, and ethics violations that will cost him his law license. And Vincent Torino? We raided his operation this morning based on evidence found in Marcus's phone. He's facing multiple racketeering and illegal lending charges. Your son's case gave us the probable cause we needed to shut down an entire criminal organization. I should have felt satisfied that justice was being served. But mostly, I just felt empty. My son was going to prison. My daughter-in-law, whom I genuinely loved, was also going to prison. The family Isabella and I had built together was completely destroyed. There's something else, Detective Rodriguez said gently. Sophia Rodriguez, yes, we're coincidentally related, she's my cousin, wants to speak with you. Sophia's here? She drove back from Queens this morning to give her formal statement. She's been waiting to see you. They brought Sophia to a small conference room. She looked tired but determined, wearing simple clothes instead of her house manager uniform. When she saw me, she smiled with genuine warmth. Mr. Walsh, I'm so relieved you're okay. Sophia, I can never repay you for what you did. You don't need to repay anything, but I do want to accept your job offer, if it's still available. Of course it's still available, I told Sophia, feeling the first genuine smile cross my face since this nightmare began. In fact, I'd like to offer you the assistant manager position at Mama's Kitchen. It's my newest and most successful location. I would be honored. Mr. Walsh, Detective Rodriguez cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt, but we need to discuss the arraignment process. Marcus, Christopher, and Mitchell Brennan will be appearing before Judge Harrison tomorrow morning. As the victim, you have the right to attend and make a statement if you choose. The thought of seeing Marcus in handcuffs, of looking at him across a courtroom, made my stomach turn. But I also knew I needed to face this head-on. I'll be there. Mr. Walsh, you should also know that Marcus has been asking to speak with you. He claims he has information about other potential victims of Vincent Torino's operation. He wants to make a deal. Possibly. The ADA can explain your options, but you're under no obligation to speak with him. I spent the rest of Sunday afternoon at home, walking through rooms that felt different now. Isabella's photographs seemed to be watching me with disappointment, as if asking how I could have failed so completely as a father. I found myself talking to her picture on the mantel. I don't understand where we went wrong, Izzy. Was I too generous with him? Too trusting? Did we spoil him somehow? Of course, she didn't answer, but I could almost hear her voice saying what she used to say when Marcus got in trouble as a teenager. People make their own choices. Theodore, you can't control what they decide to do with the love you give them. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. I dressed in my best suit, not the one I'd worn to dinner, which now felt contaminated by the memory, and drove to the courthouse. Sophia met me in the hallway outside the courtroom, having taken a personal day from her temporary job to offer moral support. "You don't have to do this alone, Mr. Walsh." "Thank you. I don't think I could." When they brought Marcus into the courtroom in orange jail clothes and handcuffs, I barely recognized him. He looked exhausted, defeated, and much older than his 34 years. When he saw me in the gallery, he mouthed the words, "I'm sorry," but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Christopher looked even worse, pale, shaking, clearly terrified. I found myself feeling sorry for him despite everything. He'd probably been pressured into this scheme by Marcus's desperation and fear of the loan sharks. Judge Harrison was a stern woman in her 60s, who clearly had no patience for elder abuse cases. She denied bail for all 3 defendants, citing flight risk and the serious nature of the charges. The court finds that these defendants engaged in a sophisticated conspiracy to defraud an elderly victim of his life savings through drugging and forged documents. The premeditation and callousness demonstrated in this case warrant continued detention. After the hearing, Ada Morrison approached me in the hallway. "Mr. Walsh, Marcus's attorney wants to arrange a meeting. Marcus claims he has detailed information about Vincent Torino's other elderly victims, and he's willing to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence." "What kind of reduced sentence?" "Instead of 15 to 20 years, possibly 8 to 10 with good behavior." I looked at Sophia, who was waiting patiently beside me. Here was someone who had risked everything to protect a stranger, and there was my son, still trying to manipulate the system to his advantage even after being caught. "I need time to think about it," I told the ADA. "Of course, you have until Friday to decide whether you're willing to participate in a plea negotiation." As we left the courthouse, Sophia took my arm gently. "Mr. Walsh, whatever you decide will be the right choice. You're a good man who was betrayed by someone you loved. Nobody can tell you how to handle that." That evening, I sat in Isabella's garden among her overgrown tomatoes and wild sunflowers, trying to figure out what she would want me to do. Forgive Marcus? Help him get a lighter sentence, or let justice take its full course? The answer, when it came to me, was surprisingly clear. Tuesday morning, I called Ada Morrison and told her I would meet with Marcus, not because I was ready to forgive him, and not because I wanted to help him get a lighter sentence. I needed to look him in the eye and understand how the child Isabella and I had raised could have tried to poison his own father. The meeting took place Wednesday afternoon at the county jail, in a small conference room with reinforced glass windows. Marcus was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, looking thinner and more haggard than he had at the arraignment. His attorney, a public defender named Sarah Chen, sat beside him taking notes. When Marcus saw me, tears immediately filled his eyes. "Dad, I am so sorry. I never meant for things to go this far." "How far did you mean for them to go?" "Marcus," I asked, keeping my voice steady and calm. We were just going to borrow against your assets temporarily, just until we could pay off Torino and get back on our feet. We were going to pay you back everything, with interest, by drugging me with GHB and forging my signature on legal documents. The drug was just to make you more relaxed, more agreeable. We weren't trying to hurt you." I stared at my son, this stranger wearing Marcus's face, and realized he still didn't understand the magnitude of what he'd done. He was still lying to himself, still believing he could manipulate his way out of consequences. "Marcus, do you know what GHB can do to a 71-year-old man? Do you understand that you could have killed me? But we were careful about the dosage." "You were careful?" I interrupted. "You researched the proper amount of poison to give your father?" His attorney touched his arm, warning him to stop talking, but Marcus continued. "Dad, Torino's people were going to hurt Christopher. They showed us pictures of what they did to the last person who couldn't pay. We were desperate. So you decided to steal from me instead of asking for help. You said no when I asked for the cryptocurrency investment loan. That was different. And you know it. That was a business speculation. This was a life or death situation according to you. If you had told me that loan sharks were threatening Christopher's safety, what do you think I would have done?" Marcus looked confused, as if this possibility had never occurred to him. "I would have helped you, Marcus. I would have found a way to protect Christopher and keep you both safe, because that's what family does for each other. I didn't think you'd believe me. I thought you'd lecture me about gambling and making bad choices. Instead, you chose to drug me and steal from me." The room fell silent, except for the sound of Marcus crying. His attorney was writing furiously, probably realizing that her client was destroying any chance of sympathy. Ada Morrison, who had been listening quietly, leaned forward. "Marcus, you mentioned information about other elderly victims. What can you tell us?" Through his tears, Marcus explained that Torino's operation specifically targeted families with elderly relatives who owned valuable assets. They would loan money to desperate family members, then provide services to help collect from elderly parents or grandparents when the debts came due. There's a woman named Patricia Vance, whose grandson borrowed money for medical school, and Robert Kim, whose daughter owes money for her restaurant startup. Torino has files on at least 15 elderly people. This information could help protect other families from going through what I'd experienced. It could also help prosecutors build a stronger case against Torino's entire operation. "Dad," Marcus said, looking directly at me, "I know you can never forgive me for what I did. I know I've destroyed our family. But please, help these other people. Don't let what happened to you happen to other fathers and mothers." I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-interest. What I saw instead was genuine remorse, and something that might have been the Marcus I used to know. The boy who used to cry when he accidentally stepped on insects, who insisted on donating his Halloween candy to homeless shelters. "I'll cooperate with the prosecution," I told Ada Morrison, "but not to help Marcus get a lighter sentence, to protect other families." Marcus nodded, understanding. "That's fair, Dad. That's more than I deserve." As I left the jail that afternoon, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel, a small measure of peace. Not forgiveness, that might never come, but a sense that maybe Isabella's son was still in there somewhere, buried under years of bad choices and desperation. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked closely with Ada Morrison and Detective Rodriguez to build cases against Vincent Torino's entire operation. Marcus's information led to the protection of 12 elderly victims and the arrest of 6 additional criminals who had been helping families defraud their own relatives. The most rewarding part was meeting some of the families we'd saved. Patricia Vance, a 78-year-old widow, cried when I told her that her grandson had been planning to forge her signature on a reverse mortgage application. Robert Kim's 82-year-old father thanked me in broken English, not understanding why a stranger would help protect him from his own daughter's scheme. "Family is supposed to protect family," he said, shaking his head sadly. "I don't understand this world anymore." I understood exactly how he felt. Sophia started working at Mama's Kitchen in November and proved to be everything I'd hoped. She had a natural talent for managing people, an eye for efficiency, and most importantly, she treated our customers and employees with genuine respect and kindness. Within a month, she had reorganized our inventory system and improved our customer satisfaction scores significantly. "Mr. Walsh," she told me one evening as we closed the restaurant together, "I want you to know that helping you was the best decision I ever made. Not because of this job, but because I learned what kind of person I want to be." "What do you mean?" I could have stayed quiet, kept my job at that house, pretended I didn't see what they were planning. It would have been easier and safer, but I realized that when you see something evil happening, staying silent makes you part of the evil. Her words reminded me of something Isabella used to say. Good people don't just avoid doing wrong, they actively choose to do right even when it's difficult. The trial began in February. Marcus, Christopher, and Mitchell Brennan all accepted plea deals in exchange for their testimony against Vincent Torino. Marcus received 8 years in prison. Christopher got 5 years, and Brennan was sentenced to 6 years plus disbarment. Torino himself received 25 years for racketeering, elder abuse conspiracy, and running an illegal lending operation. His sentencing hearing was the first time I felt truly satisfied with the justice system's response. During the trial, I learned more disturbing details about my son's situation. He had been gambling online for 3 years, initially winning small amounts that encouraged him to bet larger sums. By the time he borrowed from Torino, He was already $200,000 in debt to legitimate creditors. Christopher had been largely unaware of the extent of Marcus's gambling until Torino's people showed up at their apartment. The expensive house, the luxury cars, even Sophia's employment, all of it had been financed through Marcus's debts, creating an elaborate facade of success. "Your son is a gambling addict, Mr. Walsh," Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a court-appointed psychologist, explained to me after her evaluation. "That doesn't excuse his actions, but it helps explain the progression of poor decisions that led to this situation. Can addiction be treated? With commitment and proper support, yes. But Marcus will need to acknowledge the full extent of his problem and dedicate himself to recovery." I visited Marcus one more time before his transfer to state prison. He looked healthier. The jail had forced him to stop drinking and eating properly for the first time in years. He was also attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings and working with a counselor. "Dad, I've been thinking about something every day since I've been in here," he said. "Do you remember when I was 12 and I stole $20 from Mom's purse to buy baseball cards?" I remembered. Isabella had been devastated, not by the money but by the betrayal of trust. "You both sat me down and explained that stealing from family wasn't just wrong. It was a betrayal of love," Marcus continued. "You said that people who love each other are supposed to protect each other, not hurt each other." I remember. I forgot that lesson somewhere along the way. I forgot that you and Mom loved me unconditionally, that I could have come to you when I was in trouble. Instead, I chose to see you as a solution to my problems, instead of as my father. Marcus, what you did was unforgivable, but you're still my son, and part of me will always love the boy you used to be. I don't expect forgiveness, Dad. I just want you to know that I'm going to spend every day of my sentence trying to become the son Mom would have been proud of again. It wasn't enough to repair our relationship, but it was something. Maybe in 8 years we could find a way to be father and son again. Maybe not, but at least I could see that Isabella's son was still somewhere inside the man who had betrayed me. Today marks 1 year since that terrible dinner at Prestwick Estates. As I sit in Isabella's garden, now properly tended and more beautiful than ever, I can hardly believe how much my life has changed. Sophia became much more than an employee. She became the daughter Isabella and I never had. She manages all 3 restaurants now, having proven herself to be not only trustworthy but genuinely brilliant at business. Last month we opened a 4th location, Sophia's Place, with her as the majority owner. She insisted on naming it after Isabella instead, but I overruled her. Heroes deserve recognition. Sophia married Detective Rodriguez's partner, Miguel, last spring. I walked her down the aisle, and for the first time since Isabella's death, I cried tears of pure joy instead of grief. They live in a small house 3 blocks from mine, and Sophia stops by every Sunday for dinner. She brings flowers for Isabella's grave and updates for our restaurant's progress. The other elderly victims from Torino's operation have become an unexpected extended family. Patricia Vance invited me to her grandson's wedding after he completed a court-ordered rehabilitation program and made amends for his intended fraud. Robert Kim's son visits him every week now, having learned from his father's near miss how precious family relationships truly are. We formed a support group called Second Chances that meets monthly at Mama's Kitchen. We share our stories, support each other through difficult times, and work to educate other elderly people about financial fraud schemes. Detective Rodriguez often speaks at our meetings, teaching prevention strategies and warning signs. Marcus writes to me every few months from prison. His letters are different now, honest, reflective, filled with genuine remorse rather than manipulation. He's completed his GED, earned a bachelor's degree in social work through the prison education program, and continues attending addiction counseling. He wants to work with gambling addicts when he's released in 7 years. I haven't decided whether I'll have a relationship with him after his release. The betrayal still hurts, probably always will, but Isabella would want me to leave that door open, so I continue reading his letters and occasionally responding with brief updates about the restaurants and Sophia's success. Christopher was released after serving 3 years. He moved to California and works as a graphic designer for a non-profit organization that helps gambling addicts and their families. He sent me a card last Christmas with a simple message: Thank you for showing me what integrity looks like, even when I didn't deserve it. I never responded to the card, but I kept it. Isabella always said that redemption was possible for anyone willing to do the hard work of changing. Mitchell Brennan was disbarred and served his full sentence. I have no idea what happened to him after his release, and I don't want to know. Some people deserve forgiveness. Others simply deserve to be forgotten. Vincent Torino died in prison last year from a heart attack. I felt no satisfaction in his death, just relief that he couldn't hurt any more families. My restaurants are thriving under Sophia's management. We've instituted a program that provides jobs and job training for people coming out of addiction recovery programs. Several of Marcus's former cellmates now work in our kitchens, learning skills and earning honest livings. Isabella would have loved this initiative. I've also started dating again, something I never thought I'd do. Her name is Margaret Chen, and she's a retired nurse who volunteers at the hospital where I was treated. We met at Patricia Vance's grandson's wedding, bonded over our shared experiences with family betrayal, and discovered we both love old movies and terrible puns. Margaret doesn't replace Isabella. Nobody could. But she brings laughter and companionship to days that used to be filled with silence and grief. Isabella's pictures still smile at me from the mantel, but now they seem approving rather than reproachful. The house feels alive again. Margaret helps me tend Isabella's garden, and we've added new sections with vegetables and herbs that we use in the restaurants. She's taught me that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to carry your losses with grace, while remaining open to new blessings. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Sophia hadn't been brave enough to warn me that night. I probably would have signed those forged documents, lost everything I'd worked for, and spent my remaining years in poverty, while Marcus and Christopher lived off my stolen assets until the money ran out. But Sophia did warn me. She chose courage over safety, justice over job security, and a stranger's welfare over her own comfort. In doing so, she taught me the most important lesson of my 73 years. Family isn't always about blood relations. Sometimes the people who truly love you are the ones who choose to protect you when they have nothing to gain and everything to lose. Marcus was my biological son, but Sophia became my daughter through her actions. Christopher was my son-in-law, but Margaret became my partner through her kindness. Detective Rodriguez was a stranger, but she became my champion through her dedication to justice. The real family, the one that matters, is made up of people who see you at your most vulnerable and choose to lift you up instead of tear you down. People who risk their own safety to keep you safe. People who celebrate your successes and support you through your failures without expecting anything in return. Isabella used to say that life's greatest tragedy isn't losing the people you love. It's failing to recognize the love that surrounds you every day. For too many years after her death, I was blind to that love. Now I see it everywhere in Sophia's dedication, in Margaret's gentle humor, in the loyalty of employees who've become friends, in the courage of strangers who became allies. Marcus may have tried to steal my money, but he inadvertently gave me something far more valuable. He showed me who my real family was, and for that, perhaps someday, I might actually thank him.